I'm going to go ahead and unmute myself there in case of the Mondays. Welcome to 60 minutes of unscripted .NET entertainment. I'm your host, David Pine. I'm here and joined by the one and only Daniel Roth.
Hello.
Hi, Dan.
Hi,
and then we're also joined by some special guests from Sonar today, Denis and Andrei. So we're going to jump right into all the excitement. We've got a really special edition. It's kind of untraditional. So we're going to make the most of it. And we're going to start with Dan right away. So Dan, can you tell us what's new with Blazor?
What's new with Blazor? I would love to tell you what's new with Blazor. Thanks, Dave. It's great to be here on .NET Live with my friends from Sonar, talking about my favorite topic. We thought we'd start out with just a little recap of what's been happening with Blazor recently in .NET 8, and then maybe talk a little bit about what's coming down the pipe in .NET 9. .NET 9 is already in motion already. Things move fast. If you're new to Blazor and you're not familiar with what it is, well, Blazor is our modern front-end web framework for .NET that helps you build web apps fast. With Blazor, you can quickly build rich, interactive web experiences entirely in .NET using HTML and C#. Blazor is part of ASP.NET Core, which is our umbrella web framework for .NET, and it ships as part of the .NET platform. You can get started with Blazor in minutes, and then you can stay productive using one language, one framework, one build system, all integrated with .NET, a supported platform that you can trust. Blazor is based on a powerful reusable component model that you can use to easily handle UI events, render updates, and set up two-way data bindings. It comes with lots of built-in components for things like forms and validation and displaying large virtualized data sets. There are also great readily available Blazor component libraries from the .NET community. You can use the latest open web standards with Blazor to build web apps that are installable and function offline. We provide rich tooling for Blazor in both Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code, including project templates and hot reload and AI-powered code editing. And while you typically write your Blazor apps in C#, you can also interoperate with JavaScript code if you need to. And Blazor's been around now for several years. I think the first Blazor release we shipped was back in 2019 with .NET Core 3.0. So it's been around a little while now, but we just shipped a huge update for Blazor in .NET 8. .NET 8 shipped this past November. And in .NET 8, Blazor is no longer just a client web UI framework. It's now a full stack web UI framework. What does that mean? Well, Blazor in .NET 8 now has advanced server-side rendering capabilities, including static server-side rendering like you would do in an MVC app or a Razor Pages app, but also with a bunch of progressive enhancements on top, like enhanced navigation, form handling, and streaming rendering. These capabilities help you like optimize the page load time for a Blazor app and also enhance the user experience. You can then add rich interactivity for components wherever you need it. And you can do that either from the server using the Blazor server model over a WebSocket connection, or you can do that from the client via WebAssembly. You can even have both render modes being used within the same Blazor app, and you can automatically shift from one to the other, from the server to the client at runtime to improve app load time and scalability. So with these new capabilities in Blazor and .NET 8, Blazor is now our recommended solution for front-end web development with .NET 8. Blazor combines the strengths of both the server and the client into a single unified framework that can handle all of your web UI needs. It takes the best of Blazor Server, Blazor WebAssembly, and then frameworks like MVC and Razor Pages, combines them into a single app model that you can use for pretty much anything. There's lots of other great improvements in Blazor and .NET 8 that we're not going to go through them all, but lots of enhancements to the component model and lots of great improvements to our support on WebAssembly. If you haven't already upgraded to .NET 8, today's the day. Go hit download, go to the .NET page and install .NET 8 and get going. I thought I would show you just a quick demo of how easy it is to get started with Blazor using .NET 8. So let me pop over here and pull up Visual Studio. I have the latest Visual Studio stable release. This is Visual Studio 17.9. I'm just going to create a new project, and I'm going to create a new Blazor web app. This guy right here is the new one Blazor web app template that you need in .NET 8 for all your Blazor needs. We'll go ahead and create that. And that's a perfectly fine name for our Blazor web app. I'm going to use .NET 8, and we'll leave all the defaults here and just go ahead and click Create to build our first application. Okay, so we got our app. I'm just going to go ahead and run it so you can see what it does. And if you've seen Blazor before, this will look the same. It's not going to look any different, but it's actually doing some really interesting and new cool things under the covers. Let's get the browser to pop up here. Oh, of course, it popped up on my other monitor. There's the web app. Okay, so we got the traditional Blazor purple gradient. We have a home page, which just has some static content. And this is actually being statically rendered from the server. And what that means is the browser sent a request to the Blazor web app. The Blazor web app rendered the component to HTML, and we got this page, and then it's done. There's no WebSocket connection needed for this page. There's no WebAssembly. It's just static server-side rendering. We have the counter tab, which has a button that you can click, and the count goes up. This now is using interactive server rendering. It's now got a WebSocket connection. It just created one when I browsed to this page, so we can do things like handle UI events, make the page richly interactive. If we browse away, that WebSocket connection is now gone. It's no longer needed. And now we're back to another statically rendered page from the server. But you'll notice, let me see if I can, let me catch it. I'm going to hit refresh and try and freeze it in place. Yeah, so see this little loading ... So this is using streaming rendering. It's rendering some initial HTML with the shell of the page and that loading ... text. And then asynchronously, it's going and getting some weather forecast data, and then it streams that update down to the client. So there's some of those new advanced server-side rendering capabilities in Blazor and .NET 8. All right, let me go ahead and shut that down. And that was really simple. That's just the default project template. Let's add some more interesting functionality to this app. I'm going to add just a model type. I'm going to grab a movie class that I've got sitting over here in my documents folder. This is just a data model for a movie. It's got an ID, title, a release date, a genre, and price. And what I want to do is I want to create some pages in my Blazor web app that let me add movies to a database and edit them, delete them, basic CRUD operations, create, read, update, delete. I'm just going to right click on here, add a new scaffolded item. We're going to use scaffolding. I'm going to select Razor components, and then we're going to use the new Razor components using Entity Framework CRUD scaffolder to just do all the hard work for me. I can pick from a bunch of templates here, like create, edit, delete, details, delete, and list, or I can just select CRUD, which will generate them all. I can pick my model class. Let's find that movie type. There it is. I can then pick my existing DB context if I've already got one. I don't, so I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. And then we'll use SQL Server for our data store. And then here, Visual Studio is going to go off and generate a whole bunch of code for me based off of my data model. So I don't have to do any of that hard work. And we'll just let it generate that code. And in just a few short minutes, we should have some Blazor pages that we can play around with.
And we do have a lot of work, so it's good.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, I love it when Dan's like, we're gonna just do a real quick demo, and then we're just gonna show you how to do everything. It's
everything, boom. I mean, that's kind of the point. Like with Blazor, you can get so much done really fast. So okay, so we have now a whole bunch of pages over here, right? We got all our movie pages that just got created. Create, delete, all those normal CRUD operations. Here's the create page. It's got a form for creating movies into the database. On the home page, what I love about here is this is what's going to list all the movies. And notice we're using the new quick grid component in .NET 8. This is a built-in data grid component that comes with Blazor. It's free to use. It's fast. It's functional. So we can display data and get some really nice functionality on top of it. Let's before we run this, we got to set up the database. So I'm going to just bring up the terminal, and we'll run the EF core tooling in order to create a migration and apply it to the database. So I'm going to run .NET EF migrations add. We'll just create an initial migration. And then after that has a chance to build the project and figure out what my data model schema is. We'll just apply that to the database. Just give it a second. And then, yeah, just take 1 minute. There it goes. Why can't the tooling keep up with me? And then we'll do .NET. Oh my goodness, what's going on with?
Yeah, while you're typing that, we did have a question real quick. You could probably answer in the meantime.
Yeah, go for it.
One of our viewers on Twitch is asking about, you specifically mentioned that with Blazor, you can do so many different things. They're asking if you could actually create a video game and use it for like servers to basically render the game.
I mean, you can build anything you can build in HTML. You can build with Blazor. And if with video games, often, we want the logic to run client side. There's actually some really great capabilities in Blazor that we shipped back in .NET 6, where you can even use like native tool chains to like compile C code into WebAssembly and link that into the .NET WebAssembly runtime, so you can run complex logic client side. Like we've there's some examples where like people did full graphics rendering, like a little train simulator and things like that. By leveraging that capability. So yeah, like you can absolutely build games with Blazor. I don't know if I would say
a colleague who's doing a Wordle. Now he's working
Wordle.
Wordle with Blazor. So
yeah, you can certainly build your next the next Wordle clone in Blazor. That would be totally fine. All right, so if I got my EF migrations that have run, and let me go ahead and just browse directly to the movies page. And we should now see that this is our quick grid table. Doesn't have anything in it yet, but we can add a movie to the database. Let's add like E.T., because I believe all the best movies were made in the 80s. Sci-fi. I don't know if that's actually the release date for E.T. I'm just making it up. But it's sometime in the 80s. We'll go and create that. That shows up in our database. We can see its details. We can go back to the list and we can delete it and all that good stuff. So that's super fun. So we have a functional table. To show you what that table can really do, though, what I'm going to do is let me shut this down, and I'm going to go back to my DB context. I'm just going to add some add some seeded data into the database. I'm just going to add a whole bunch of movies. And we're going to have to run EF migrations one more time just to include that. So let's call this one movies. Let me make sure I saved. It did. Great. So this will now scaffold in a set of movies that we can just play around with in the database. Usually second time it's a little faster. My machine's a little slow. This is where everyone's supposed to start cheering, you know, get Dan a new machine. There it goes. All right, so then .NET EF database update. Let's update the database with our movie list. And that should put the list of movies in the database. Great. Okay, and we'll go ahead and run that. And so now instead of just an empty table, then we have to manually add movies to. We should have a whole bunch of movies.
And I mean, to be fair, within 10 minutes here, we spun up a new app from a template that now has a database behind it, which is real, right? It's got all these movies in it that were seeded, and then now you're pulling them into there, and you've got CRUD operations with UI on top of it.
That's right.
And form validation and quick grid and
so here's quick grid. Let me do some things with quick grid real quick. So like, for example, like let's say I don't really like the way this release date is being formatted. No problem. We can just go in here and put in a format string. What do we want? Like month, day, year. And I know all the people in Europe are going, you animal, who puts the month first? Like, why would you do that?
My point exactly.
There's the it just hot reloaded into the page, so that looks good. We could also make like the title page sortable. Like we want to make this sort, and then we should be able to refresh and get. Now I can click the. Actually, before we do that, like right now, this page is currently just doing static server-side rendering. So nothing's actually listening for UI event handlers yet. So this is a good thing to know. We actually have to enable interactivity for this page by adding an interactive render mode. So we're going to make this interactive server, and then we'll go ahead and restart that. So that we can see the change.
I remember 9 or 10 years ago, I was working on an ASP NET MVC 3 site, and it wasn't as fast. Developing this thing wasn't as fast, and I was doing more or less the same. An app to show some data, and
things have gotten quicker. So there, now you can like sort, you can add pagination. Hopefully that gives you a flavor of all the things you can do really quickly with Blazor with the built-in components and a first-class .NET component model with .NET. Okay, that's what I wanted to show. That's sort of your quick getting started with Blazor. If you haven't done it yet, go to .NET and install .NET 8 and try it out. There's actually lots of ways that you can get going with .NET 8 with your existing web applications. If you're already using Blazor, just do an upgrade. You can go from your existing Blazor server or Blazor WebAssembly app, upgrade them to .NET 8, and they should just work. You can then optionally also start adding the new Blazor web app features into your application. If you have an existing ASP.NET Core app and you're not using Blazor yet, no problem. You can just start adding Blazor pages alongside your existing MVC views or your Razor pages. Inside your views and Razor pages, you can also add Blazor components to them using the component tag helper that will render a component right there inside your CSHTML file. From minimal APIs and MVC controllers, we now have a Razor component result type in .NET 8 that you can just return to render a component. And for all you folks out there that are using JavaScript, no problem. You can also use Blazor because Blazor supports rendering components as HTML custom elements. So just using open web standards, you can take a Blazor component and surface it in your even JavaScript-based application as a custom HTML tag. So that's Blazor in .NET 8. Now you might be wondering, well, what's coming next? Like what's coming down the pipe in .NET 9? We just shipped the first preview of .NET 9 and announced the .NET 9 release wave last month. So work is happening on .NET 9, and we've just recently published the Blazor roadmap for .NET 9 on GitHub, so you can go and check it out. These are the themes that we're working on for .NET 9. Blazor in .NET 8 was obviously a very ambitious release. We put lots of new functionality, lots of new capabilities into that release. In .NET 9, we're going to take some time to focus on quality and improving the fundamentals of those features to make the developer experience smoother and more natural. So first of all, for Blazor web apps, we know there's still some experience gaps that we need to fill with when using Blazor web apps and all those new features and how in terms of how they interact with each other, making sure that you can easily switch between the different render modes as you want to. Like if you're starting out fully interactive and you want to do a static page, we're going to make sure that that's possible. The opposite's already true. If you're starting static and you want to go interactive, we already enable that, but we're going to make sure you can go the opposite way. We'll give you some APIs so you can detect the current render mode. There's some work we want to do with pre-rendering and persisting the state that gets used for pre-rendering components from the server. So that works well with the new enhanced navigation features. And we didn't quite get to enabling Entra-based authentication in .NET 8, so we're going to do that in .NET 9. For you Blazor server fans out there, we're planning a bunch of work for Blazor Server 2. We've already done the work to enable compression at the WebSocket layer for the messages that flow over the WebSocket connection so that your Blazor server interactions are faster and they take up less network traffic. We're going to do some work for observability to improve distributed tracing for Blazor server so it doesn't just look like one big long request in your distributed traces. And we know that it's with Blazor server, one of the common pain points is the reconnection experience. Like if the connection gets dropped or the server circuit state gets lost, you end up in that sort of whited out, I no longer have a connection to the server user experience. We're going to work on improving that so that it's less jarring for users and a little bit more automatic in terms of remediation. For you Blazor WebAssembly fans, we're going to do a bunch of work on how we handle static web assets so that they're all fingerprinted so you avoid caching problems like when you're using a CDN. We're, of course, going to keep working on optimizing the page load time and the startup time, including using aggressive caching, pre-compressing more of the files, and using modern browser features like links in order to preload assets. We are also still working on multi-threading. That's been a long-standing ask for Blazor WebAssembly. The runtime folks have made really great progress there. We're now working through the issues in the Blazor framework itself to remove all the places where we make single-threaded assumptions. We're peeling the onion. We think we might be able to get this into .NET 9, but right now it's still tentative, so not committed yet, but we are still making progress on it. And then we have a whole bunch of other just general developer experience improvements that we're working on. Like we've added support for constructor injection that will be coming in .NET 9 Preview 2, adding metrics so that you can use things tools like Grafana to measure how your Blazor web apps are performing, and then investing in our Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code tooling experiences so you have better support for hot reload and a better Razor editing experience. So that's the high level list of things. You can, of course, find all the details on GitHub at aka.ms/ASP.NET/roadmap.
That's awesome. We do have another question coming in, actually a couple real quick. YouTube viewers asking, or stating that they didn't notice any Blazor hybrid news. Is there anything you can say about that?
Yeah, I can. So, the Blazor hybrid bits, for the most part, ship with Maui, so I didn't include them here. But we are doing Blazor hybrid work in .NET 9. The big effort there is on providing like a template-like experience, like initial getting started experience for when you want to do both Blazor hybrid, which is a native app development model, as well as web. If you want to do web, mobile, and desktop all together, today you kind of have to piece that together. You create a .NET MAUI Blazor hybrid application, then you add a Blazor web app and maybe a Razor class library to share your components, and you kind of stitch the whole thing together based off of our docs. We are working on producing a template so that you can just file a new project and say, I want to target all three of these platforms and have that set up for you. So that's the big thing that we're working on in .NET 9. There are a bunch of other just smaller quality of life improvements that are coming as well.
Awesome. And then another question real quick before we shift on here. So they're asking, is there any hope of preserving scoped service providers during Blazor server reconnects?
Is there any hope of scoped service providers during Razor server reconnects? So depends what you mean by reconnect. So reconnect can mean two things in Blazor server. It might mean that the network connection just got dropped. Like you're using a Blazor server app and then you go through a tunnel, you lost your network connection. Blazor server will hold on to the server side state for that user for a period of time. I think the default period of time is like 3 minutes. And then when the network comes back up, the Blazor server will try to it will keep polling the server, trying to reconnect back to that original state, and then you're back up and running. Any scope services should still be in scope, as far as I understand, in that mode. I believe. If I'm wrong on that, feel free to correct me. I might, because they would be you want it tied to the circuit lifetime, not just to the
I thought so too.
Actually,
yeah.
that might be the problem they're talking about, right? Is that the scope services in the ASP NET core are typically tied to the request,
right?
And they might not be set up by default to go for the full circuit. Great question. We should probably take that one to GitHub and discuss that. Like, if you could go to our roadmap, find the GitHub issue about improving the reconnection experience, give it a thumbs up to let us know that you care about it, and put a comment about that particular problem. I hadn't thought about that one before. It's good point.
Yeah, and I think that's it for the questions right now. But I mean, you're showing all this new stuff and, the updates and, starting from a template, but like, I'm a production developer and I want to like have clean code and I want to write stuff that looks well. And maybe I don't care for the templates. Like, is there any way we can do better with some of these things?
Well, fortunately, we have our friends here from Sonar, and they do some really great work to help you write clean code, not only in your C# code, but also in Razor for Blazor applications. They have an awesome suite of analyzers and cloud-based tooling that help you do that. And Denis and Andrei, do you guys want to tell us all about it?
Sure. Well, yeah, we are in the business of making your code clean, helping you keep a handle on what you're developing. Because when you reach a certain code size, we all know it tickles, shall we say. You get some nice technical debt.
That's an interesting phrase, though. I mean, I don't know if I think of it that way. Sometimes I think of other ways of describing it.
Pretty much, yeah. So what we do is we build the tools that help you keep your code clean, right? And thankfully, Dan, not so long ago, came to us and said, "Hey guys, are you gonna support Blazor?" And we said, "Yes, why not?" So we extended what we were doing because we've been doing that for .NET for about more than 10 years, I think now.
Yeah.
And so we decided to support Blazor. And given the new announcement, it seems like it was a pretty good idea, looking where it's going. So what we're going to do is I'm going to transition to Andrei. He's going to show you what you can expect if you develop Blazor and you use our tools.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a small app. This is coming from a GitHub repo called Blazor samples. So this is where you can find it, and it has all sorts of apps, for .NET 8, all sorts of scenarios. And in my case, it's a simple CRUD app showing some contacts. So you can open the contact, view it. It has a telephone, an address. You can edit it. You can change the name, although it doesn't happen that often, but it can happen. And you can, again, it has lots of out-of-the-box features like Daniel showed. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to break the app. So I'm going to go to my IDE, and I'm going to close the Solution Explorer. Let's say that I want to change the contact ID here in the route from integer to long because the app just became super viral and I need 64 bits to keep my contact ID, and I'm gonna hot reload the thing, and I'm getting here. Okay, I have the small tick, and now I want to again demo effect. Just a second, view the contact. This should have broken. I'm gonna close it and I'm gonna run it again. Hopefully it's gonna break. Otherwise I'm gonna have a problem with my demo. So it's loading, and there you go. an exception.
Woohoo!
Yes.
We love exceptions.
Yes. So you can see here it has a wonderful exception which says invalid cast exception. Unable to cast object from system 64 to 32 bits. And if I would have had Sonar here, it would have told me, oh, I have it actually inside my IDE. Amazing. And you see here the error. It says, okie dokie. So it says parameter type int does not match route parameter. So the idea with this kind of errors, you might say that, hey, every dev tests their code, so this is not going to reach production, but it's the same with null reference exceptions. It's better to have a handy companion that does some automatic code review, especially if it's open source, especially if it's free to use, like our analyzer is. And this sort of feedback helps Blazor developers, especially when being tired or when onboarding a project and not being aware of all the nitty-gritty details. It's good to know these sort of things can happen. And then inside Sonar Cube, so this is our server for teams to manage their code quality as a team and to monitor it, and Denis is gonna show you more about that. But here you can see okay, where is the issue, but also why it is an issue. We do some education, how you can fix it, some things that essentially the Microsoft documentation tells you, but here you get it in the context of your application, and also sending you to actually the Microsoft official docs. And I will do another attempt to break this app. So here I made it work. Here what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say, let's say we want to filter and only based on contact filter columns, and this thing is, you know, based, say I have a feature request that I only want to show the name, or I only want to show the phone number for whatever reason. And again, this time I am going to shut it down and open it again, because I know that this doesn't work with hot reload. And then again, I get another of these exceptions. Query string values cannot be parsed as a type. So the exception is good. It's tells you what is wrong. The only thing is that it happens at runtime, right? So it doesn't happen during the build succeeds. However, again, our analyzer, our small analyzer tells you, hey, query parameter type is not supported. So you get it also in the error list here. And we also have some, so we've added in total 5 rules. I'm going to show you another 2, and then 2 will be shown by Denis. The last one will be shown by Denis. So this is about when you want to call a method from JavaScript, you should mark it as public. If you don't mark it as public, it won't work. It won't be called. So if I do that, the squiggly line goes away. And last, and maybe least, is this rule of component parameters can only receive query parameter values in routable components. This is actually something that is relevant for NET 6 and NET 7. Because in NET 8, the Razor team made supply parameter from query a cascading attribute. So now it does work even if you use it in non-routable components. But in .NET 6 and .NET 7, you basically, the idea is that this parameter would only work if it would be in a component that has a route, like here. And if it doesn't have a route, like here, it wouldn't work. So last but not least, actually, this is very important before I hand over to Denis, is the fact that we launched, we have support for analyzing with all these rules and analyzing, you know, also raising our other rules, like you have a to do here, and you should do something about it. And Denis is going to show more kinds of rules. But we support this in SonarCube and Sonar Cloud. We don't yet in SonarLint, which is the IDE extension, and we don't yet in our NuGet. So our NuGet Sonar source here, our NuGet analyzer, our analyzer, everything that is in SonarCube, in SonarLint is also just as a simple analyzer. You just get more features with the products, but you can just take it from here. You see it has plenty of downloads, and a lot of people trust it. What I demoed is not yet present in the NuGet because the problem is how the source generators work for Razor. So they have one behavior at compile time and one behavior at runtime. And maybe I'll talk at the end, if we have time, about these nitty-gritty details. And we plan to do that in the second quarter of this year. So we have a sprint planned for around the month of May to bring all of this to basically support also okay, I'll stop. You can move from the screen sharing. I don't have other things to share. You basically will support later in the year also in SonarLint, also in the NuGet, also for the design time compilation,
Nice.
source generation. Yeah. And thanks a lot, by the way. I really want a public thanks, big thanks to Daniel and to the Razor team at Microsoft for all the things that they fixed for us to be able to do all of this. So all the small tickets that we opened, and they were really good in communication, really good in shipping them. And they actually shipped what we need to move forward with SonarLint. They shipped it in Visual Studio 17.9. So really big public round of applause. So
I wish I could take personal credit for fixing any of these issues, but I'm a really good email sender, I think, is my superpower there. And we had the folks that work on Roslyn and on the C# compiler, like they were very eager to to work together with Sonar on these issues and make sure that the developer experience is as good as it can be. So thanks for raising that feedback.
I've seen the email threads. That was impressive.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. So Denis, if you want to go next with
Sure.
showing some things in Sonar Cloud.
Right. So if you let me share my screen, what Andrei just showed you is what happens in the IDE. So with SonarLint, which is a Visual Studio extension, which contains our analyzers, run them, and brings you a bit more UI-wise, more feedback. And then he showed you also SonarCube, which is a server, as he said, which allows your team to monitor the quality of your PRs, your branch, and so on. And I'm going to show you the same thing. SonarCube, sorry, it's the server that's on premises. And I'm going to show you the same type of things in Sonar Cloud, which is a hosted software as a service offering. SonarCube is free for anyone to use, install the community version forever. And Sonar Cloud is completely free for open source projects. So go ahead, clean your code. So what I'm going to show you first, it's a bit of a sample of the type of issues that you can see. Andrei showed you Blazor specific issues. Thing is, we've been doing that for a long time. We have lots of rules that apply for any type of code. And of course, we will also analyze the code inside your Razor templates to give you the same kind of insight into the quality of your code. So, well, let's go first with this one. That's basically what Andrei showed you. Detect commented out code. Sorry, he showed you to-dos. This is commented out code. Usually not a great thing to leave lying around. Contributes to code depth in a sense. So we will show you where it is and how to correct it. Well, in that case, how to is pretty easy. And the goal is to increase the maintainability of your code, of course, and also get rid of nasty bugs if possible. So on the maintainability front, you have things like consistency. We all know it's annoying to have in one file or even one method, someone having curly braces and someone not having them. And we would argue that not having them is a bad idea, generally speaking.
One of those people is a bad person. Like they
Yes.
I won't say which one. Just one of them.
Yes. Thank you for conveying my point in a much more diplomatic way. So this one again, everybody knows it, everybody hates it, but it's good to have it. And Andrei was talking about the last Blazor rule that we have. It's this one. So avoid using lambda expression in loops in Blazor markup. Let's have a look. So, excuse me. So if you're doing any kind of front-end development, JavaScript side, shall we say, HTML and JavaScript, it's a pretty current thing. You pretty easily use lambdas to create event handlers, something like this, right? Async, arrow, await, whatever. This is fine, except from Microsoft's mouth, if you do that in a component that renders like thousands of times, it becomes a bad idea. It's a performance issue. And it's pretty easy to do it if you're used to doing it in JavaScript. So that's the kind of thing we bring to your attention. If you click on the Y here, we do explain that it's a bad idea for lots of UI elements being rendered.
I love that it shows like code smell too. Like that's like the labeling of how you guys are, raising this to people's attention. And that's really clever.
This is actually, if you look here, that's the old terminology.
Okay.
We're backing off from that because it's a bit of a segue here. We came up with a different way of expressing the problems with your code, which is what you can see here. I'll go back to that.
So it's still, I guess maintainability is still pretty understandable by
absolutely.
So,
the idea is to not categorize anymore what's going on, but to show you the impact of the issue on your code. So this issue has an impact on the maintainability of your code. Could have an impact on the consistency, like I showed you before with the missing curly braces, for example, or rules about naming, because you want your naming practices to be the same across your code base, across your team, to maintain something that's readable. So hopefully. And so yeah, we now show you the impact here. You could have an impact on security because we also have what we call taint analysis that will go through everything that comes into your app from the outside, traces it through the code down to what we call sinks, which are where we use it. For example, if you build file path, if you build a SQL query, you shouldn't do that. But if you do it,
with user input, usually it's not a good thing to.
Exactly.
You should have that audio clip of you saying that when it's discovered. You should not do that.
That's a good feature request. Right. Yeah, I mean, in the IDE. So.
Right. What I really love about this user experience is how educational it is, right? Like how explanatory it is for each of the issues, instead of it just being like this analyzer hit, the rule fired, and I'm letting you know that the rule fired, and you go figure out what to do next. Like it's a very instructive. A lot of the, like in this case, I think this is a performance guidance, right? Out of the probably straight out of the Blazor docs about how to like make rendering fast, and it's pulling that up right there and into the developer experiences, into the developer's workflow, which is really nice.
It is very important because the way we see it, this tool is as much to ensure your software quality as it is to grow as a developer. Nobody can know everything about all the pieces of framework. It's massive. Like I'm talking about the whole .NET framework. It's just ridiculously big. So if you think about your journey from lowly junior developers to getting very comfortable with it, when you start, it's a lot of things to learn, and it's a lot of traps to be coded. And
even for
as much
senior
as
devs, for senior devs, when you change the tech stack, you become, I mean, of course you have a lot of experience on how to, you learn better, but you still get a lot of usefulness. You get a lot of useful information when you onboard a new tech stack from such tooling.
But this one is a prime example, because if you come from JavaScript and HTML, you would fall into this trap.
I mean, I'm looking at the chat, and I just want to make sure there's a nuance to this, like the in loops criteria on this guidance is important. Like you can use Lambda expressions for event handlers in Blazor, and that's perfectly fine. Like if you just have a single button and you want to handle the on-click handler, and you just want to put that in line in the on-click Razor directive attribute, that's perfectly fine. What happens is that sometimes you're rendering a loop of rows, like in a table or a grid or whatever, and you want to have event handlers on each one. And if you use the Lambda syntax, then every time you're iterating through that loop, like you're going to be generating those Lambda expressions, which has a cost. And if you instead like factored that out as a separate delegate, it would be more performant. So you can still use Lambda expressions for all you Lambda fans out there. I see them in the chat. Just be aware that if you're doing it in a long running loop, that could get expensive.
And then if you click on more info, you also get some benchmarks. So we also try to give give around these sort of, we have other rules around string operations, for example, and we give the benchmarks because it matters a lot, the context, even if it's a loop, but it depends which kind of loop. Like you said, is it a long running loop, or is it, and then you can look at these benchmarks that we've created, and you can make a decision.
You have benchmarks in here too? Like, oh my word, this is amazing.
Well, of course, every time we have something performance related, we try to back up our claim. Otherwise, it's useless.
This is really intriguing too, because I recall earlier in my career, I learned a lot from ReSharper. Admittedly, it would have these recommendations. I would take those recommendations, but I learned as I continued to develop that I was making less and less of those kind of suggestion based code patterns, because I was learning as I was being instructed, and this is very much a learning tool as well. So kudos for that. It's awesome.
It is, because the end goal is to have better software quality, and for that you need to know why you're correcting an issue. Why is it an issue? How do I correct it? Where can I find more information? So that over time you will not even see that error showing up anymore. Yeah. And it's important when you onboard a new team member, be it a junior developer or a seasoned developer that has never touched the stack, as Andrei was saying. You really want them to get up to speed and get better as fast as they can, and they normally want to as well. So that's a big focus of those tools.
Yeah, and
give you more information.
That's a very good point, and the fact to create this standard for the team. And also, when we were talking about code smells, we try to put in the default behavior those things that are not super subjective. So we also have rules which are not enabled by default, and then teams can select them, and whichever works for them can parameterize some of them, and etc. So everybody can have the same standard of code quality.
Exactly. Right. So two more that I would like to show you. This one is important. You see the impact of this one is not on maintainability like the others, it's on reliability. And you see the old terminology here. This is classified as a bug because it impacts reliability. Well, let's have a look.
So there was maintainability, reliability. Was there any other categories?
Yes,
Security.
there are.
Security.
Yeah.
And let me think 2 seconds.
Is one of them readability? Because that would be something I would recommend if there's like inconsistencies with like editor.
That would be
consistency.
Consistency.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Falls into maintainability, I think.
Yeah, so basically we have attributes for code and we have software qualities. So software qualities is maintainability, reliability, and security, I think. And then on the code attributes is this sort of consistency, intentionality, the blue things that you see there.
I would
Yeah,
filter on the left.
Oh, okay, yeah. So
Awesome.
responsibility, like if you don't have used the correct license, etc. Yeah.
Ah, oh wow.
So
awesome.
basically, every time you have an issue, it could decrease either the consistency, the intentionality, the adaptability, or the responsibility. And that in turn has an effect on your software, the software that you build from your source code. So this refers to the clean code attributes refers to your source code, okay, what you're writing. And it translates into an impact on the quality of the software your source code turns into. We spent a long time trying to refine what is clean code, how we can reason about it, because that's our bread and butter. We came up with those 4 attributes for now. Okay, these are 4 master attributes, and then we have lots of, let's say, sub attributes that specialize. And we came up with those 3 software qualities for now. We're looking at adding some more. That could be sustainability, for example, is a big one that we're thinking about. How your code impacts the sustainability of your software. That's an example of the things we're looking at. So to go back to what I was saying, this one tells you that context. Let me find where it is. Where did it go? Here. This variable here is null on at least one execution path. We have an engine that tracks your variables, the state of your software, the state of your code through a simulated execution, and that can tag things and tell you where that will cause problem. In that case, working through all of that code, we figured out that actually context is nullable, and you knew because you used the question mark here. And it turns out if you don't fall through that one, that means you end up in this one, and that means this one could actually be null. So that's the kind of what we call runtime issues or advanced issues that we can figure out for you to try and prevent bugs from showing up in testing and, God forbid, production, because those kind of bugs, based on the path that you take, there's a good chance you won't see them for a while. So we tend to think of them as really valuable.
That's awesome.
And the last,
just real quick, like clarification on like the null conditional logic there and falling through. So, and that's something that just doesn't natively come out of the IDE or the tooling. So that's and is that inside? That's inside Razor markup, right?
Yes, it is. The thing is, for that specific set of code, I didn't say, but this code is actually an open source project that I forked in an old state. It's the Blazor component library.
Yeah,
you did see. I forgot to say, and I want to tip my hat to those guys because that's a fantastic open source project.
I love Blazor. I use it quite a bit, actually.
we actually send them an email asking them if they'd be interested in using Sonar Cloud to check the code.
It's free for open source.
Dan was muted, but I saw him trying to say something about Mud Blazor.
Oh, I was just saying, I think we have several users in the chat that were also talking about the Mud Blazor usage. So
Nice.
Not
awesome.
the only fans.
So where was I? Yeah, and in Mud Blazor, if I remember correctly, doesn't use the nullable checks from C#, which is why you wouldn't see anything anyway here. But we do go through all those branches and check them for you anyway.
The nullability checking in Blazor is kind of an interesting problem, right? Because Blazor components have their own life cycle for when things get populated that the C# nullability checking doesn't know about, like, component parameters and these types of things. It's an area that I think we still have some room for improvement for in the platform itself.
And in that case, it's actually the item template in a list component. So you're talking about the current iteration, the current value from the iteration of the collection, and it's, as far as I remember, it's not typed as nullable anyway. So we can't know because there's no the nullable expression. Nullable option is not activated, so we have to assume it could be nullable, which is why we raise that rule in that context. And the last one, I'm sure you're all familiar with this one. Again, not judging, but that being said, this is, let me see. There we go. This is a method in the component. Okay, it returns a render fragment, which is a piece of HTML. And sorry,
10 right there.
I don't want to game the system.
11. Where's the 11 button?
So basically, this one is about the complexity of this method. It is long. It's got lots of if, else, things like that. And
it's different from cyclomatic complexity. So people might be used to cyclomatic complexity, which counts how many loops you have in your code, and too many loops, it makes it difficult. What we did with cognitive complexity is actually looking at the branches, because if you have a lot of branches, nested ifs, for example, nested ifs have very low cyclomatic complexity. However, they're really hard to follow the logic in the nested if. Imagine 3 levels of nested ifs. So we add these for loops for any branching statement. We count it for cognitive complexity, and it's actually something really useful in practice for devs to know when to split a component here, or split a method into multiple smaller methods.
Exactly. In that case, probably you would want to create either a separate method, or much better, because this is actually Blazor code, you would create components probably.
Otherwise, you have to go to Copilot and say, Copilot, what is this code doing? Because I just don't.
Yeah. No. I mean,
and that's what defeats Copilot, right? Copilot's like,
God, not too many nested ifs. Look at all these nested ifs.
No, everybody's written that one at least once, and I would argue more than once in their lifetime. I've done that, and I've come back to it like months later and went, what was I thinking? That's just ridiculous. What am I trying to do here?
We could all share horror stories, right? Like I've seen like 2,000 lines of inline SQL on a page load in a web form. Like, if postback, boom.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is not all this tooling is not judgmental, right? Because we've all been there. We've all been super focused on the feature that we want to deliver, on various pressures that we have from management, from our own, when we end up working longer than we thought on a particular feature, we kind of want to cut some branches and maybe, okay, this one can go in, it's fine, it's not that big. And this tooling just helps be consistent about cleaning code and cleaning code as you go. All the code that you touch, cleaning it, making it cleaner than before. It's the Boy Scout rule, right? Leave the forest a better place. Leave the code base a better place. And our solution helps just make that true, make that possible. Like, hey, block a pull request if it's not at your standard. And then in time, first it's going to be a little painful, but in time it is going to work out, and everybody is going to just introduce that in their normal workflow, and we'll treat that as part of the delivery.
And
So
actually, yeah, go on.
I wonder, like, so people want to start using this. Like, what does that look like? Like, can people just start using the Sonar technologies today? Like, how do you do that?
Sure. Well, it's pretty easy. You just go to sonarcloud.io. You log in with, shall we say, you create your account, and then you can connect to your GitHub repo, for example, or your Azure DevOps, or what have you.
Yeah,
and select your
pipelines, whatever. Yeah.
So let's say I want to analyze new projects. I've got my organization here because I already connected, and then I can just select the repository. Unfortunately, they're all in use right now, pretty much, because I've been doing some testing.
Empty test there, which is not.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's in there, to be honest. But
yeah, you don't have to go through at the end.
Anyway,
but, you know,
that's it. You create the project. If you're eligible, the analysis will actually be run on our systems because we can infer lots of things looking at the code. In that case, empty test, I'm pretty sure is .NET framework code.
And just to make a small clarification, by eligible, it's not something, you know, paid or whatever. It's just we currently do automatic analysis on our servers, so you don't have to set up anything in your CI. If it's a .NET Core project with GitHub Actions, currently this is the eligibility criteria, and now we're launching it more. And otherwise, you have to set up a CI action, just a GitHub action, and then you just get everything here. You know, you just copy paste this in a YAML file in your CI, boom, and that's all.
Put your build comment here.
Yeah,
and you're good to go.
Is there a free version for using the product?
Yeah, that's what I'm using right now.
Huh?
Yeah, so Sonar Cloud is free for open source, and SonarCube community, which has like 90% of the features of the .NET offering, is free for whatever enterprise, private code, whatever you want. It's on premise, so you have to set it up.
Sure.
And SonarLint in Visual Studio, in Rider, in VS Code, free extension. That's the lowest entry barrier, right? Just install an IDE extension, and then you start getting the automatic code review. In addition to all the awesome stuff that comes bundled in the .NET SDK, in the Visual Studio IDE. So it's complementary, right?
Awesome. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. I think we are at our time box. I appreciate you guys coming on. This has been a huge show. There's been a ton of engagement. So thank you so much. And check us out next week. We're back with Deb, who's going to from Intel, actually, who's going to be joining us to talk about AI and machine learning. So that should be a really fun one on March 18th at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Thank you all so much. Take care.
Until next time, friends.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.